whatever you're doing, because what happened on live television shocked millions in seconds. One moment, Samuel L. Jackson was calmly answering questions, and the next, he was exploding at George Stephanopoulos and walking straight off the Good Morning America set. Viewers had never seen anything like this. The studio froze. Producers panicked. And social media went into full meltdown. This wasn't just an awkward interview. This was a live TV disaster that turned into the biggest celebrity clash of the year. Let me show you exactly how it happened. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Now let's dive into what really happened. Chaos. Absolute chaos. Broadcasting live to millions. That's the only phrase powerful enough to describe the moment Hollywood icon Samuel L. Jackson collided head-on with famed anchor George Stephanopoulos on Good Morning America. A moment so unexpected, so explosive, that the studio is still trying to recover from the shockwaves it sent across the country. Yet the day had started like any other. The lights were warm, the cameras were steady, and the studio buzzed with routine morning energy. Producers moved around briskly with clipboards, headsets crackling with last-second instructions. Stage managers signaled countdowns. The audience whispered with excitement, ready to see one of Hollywood's most recognizable stars in person. Everything was perfectly ordinary, until it wasn't. From the very moment Samuel walked onto the set, something felt different. He carried his usual confidence, but there was a seriousness in his eyes, a calm alertness that only seasoned actors possess. George greeted him with the trademark smile that America wakes up to. But behind that smile, there was an edge, a tension, subtle but unmistakable. The cameras switched on. The theme music faded. Millions of viewers leaned forward with their morning coffee. And the very first question from George Stephanopoulos threw the entire room off balance. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't rude. But it touched on territory Samuel had made clear multiple times. He didn't want to revisit. And the second the words left George's mouth, you could practically feel the oxygen drain out of the studio. Samuel didn't interrupt. He didn't snap. He didn't lash out. Instead, he paused. A long, heavy pause that echoed louder than any answer could have. Producers exchanged worried glances. The control room froze. You could almost see the thoughts racing behind Samuel's eyes, calculating whether to play along, avoid the bait, or confront the moment head-on. And then, with a calmness that made the tension even sharper, Samuel leaned forward. His voice was steady. His tone was firm. But his words carried the unmistakable weight of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. Really, George? We're going there today. The audience gasped. George blinked in surprise, his practiced composure faltering for the first time. This was not the upbeat Hollywood interview people expected. This was not a soft morning segment. This was a storm gathering strength, live on national television. Behind the scenes, chaos erupted. One producer mouthed, "Cut," to the director. Another pointed frantically at the cue cards. The floor manager silently pleaded with George to switch topics. But the damage was already done. Samuel adjusted in his seat, his frustration now visible. George attempted to maintain control of the interview, but the power dynamic had already shifted. The tension was no longer subtle. It was electric, thick enough to make the viewers at home lean closer to their screens. The audience inside the studio sat stone still. No one coughed. No one whispered. No one moved. Everyone could sense what was coming. This wasn't just a disagreement. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was the beginning of a live television meltdown that no one, not the studio, not George, not even Samuel, could stop once it started rolling. And millions watching at home had absolutely no idea they were about to witness one of the most jaw-dropping, unfiltered moments in Good Morning America history. Moments that would replay across social media for days, weeks, even months to come. Because the storm hadn't hit yet. This was only the first rumble. The explosion was still seconds away. It should have been harmless. It should have been routine. But one single question, just one, was all it took to turn a calm interview into a full-blown firestorm. As the tension from Section 1 continued simmering beneath the surface, George Stephanopoulos attempted to steer the conversation forward, pretending nothing was wrong. His smile tightened, His hands clasped together, and he leaned in with the practiced posture of a polished morning show host. "Let's talk about your new film," George began. The crew exhaled silently, relieved. But instead of staying on track, George pivoted. He shifted his line of questioning to an old controversy, one that Samuel L. Jackson had repeatedly asked interviewers to avoid, especially during film promotions. The moment the words left George's lips, the air in the studio changed. It was no longer tension. It was ignition. Samuel froze, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly. The audience members exchanged uneasy looks. Even viewers at home could feel the sudden shift through their screens. This wasn't curiosity. This wasn't journalism. This was provocation. And Samuel knew it. He leaned back in his chair, his expression going from cordial to controlled in a matter of seconds. The studio grew so silent that even soft shuffling of cue cards could be heard. Then, with a low, steady voice, Samuel spoke. "Man, you're seriously going to bring that up? On live TV?" George tried to play innocent, offering a tight, uncomfortable smile. "Oh, I'm just asking questions," he replied. But Samuel wasn't buying it. His response was sharper this time, still calm, but carrying a tone that could slice through the studio lights. "Then ask the right ones." That line cut deeper than anyone expected. The camera operators froze, unsure whether to zoom in for dramatic effect or cut away to a reaction shot. The control room erupted with panic whispers. Producers scrambled between microphones, arguing about whether to intervene. But before anyone could act, the moment escalated. George attempted to interrupt Samuel mid-sentence, an instinctive move, a host's reflex, but the worst possible decision in that moment. Samuel lifted a hand, shutting him down instantly. "No, let me finish," he said, his voice firm and unshakable. The entire audience held its breath. George, visibly rattled, tried to regain his composure, but the balance of power had shifted completely. Samuel was no longer the guest. He was the one commanding the room, holding the attention of millions with each passing second. And then he dropped a line that would go viral across every platform. "I'm here to talk about my work, not to give you something sensational to trend with." A low murmur swept through the live audience. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, "Wow." The studio atmosphere turned electric. George blinked repeatedly, struggling to find the right words. This wasn't how interviews were supposed to go. Stars didn't talk back. Guests didn't challenge the host. Not on Good Morning America, and certainly not in front of a global audience. But Samuel wasn't finished. He leaned forward, eyes locked onto George's, his voice dropping to a level both calm and devastating. "If you wanted drama, you should have booked someone else." There it was, the moment the internet would replay, dissect, remix, and meme for months. George shifted uncomfortably in his seat, breaking eye contact. He shuffled his papers, tried to mask his discomfort, but the tension was overwhelming. Even the co-hosts sitting off camera were stunned into silence, unsure whether to jump in or stay completely still. The atmosphere was no longer tense. It was combustible, and everyone in the studio could feel it. This was no longer an interview. This was a battle of composure. A battle George was rapidly losing. And Samuel, calm, poised, unshaken, was just getting started. The firestorm had only begun. What happened next wasn't just uncomfortable, it was explosive. George Stephanopoulos had underestimated Samuel L. Jackson, and the second he tried to regain control, the situation spiraled completely out of his hands. Millions of viewers at home were witnessing something few had ever seen. A Hollywood legend standing up, not politely, not diplomatically, but firmly, refusing to be manipulated on live television. The attempt to pivot back to mundane movie talk failed miserably. Samuel wasn't having it. He leaned forward, his piercing gaze fixed directly on George. His tone was calm but deadly clear. "I said what I came here to say. If you don't respect that, then this conversation is over." The words hit like a thunderclap. The studio went silent, save for the subtle hum of cameras and the faint shuffle of crew members. Everyone inside the studio felt it. Tension so thick it was almost visible. George's practiced smile faltered. He opened his mouth to speak, but Samuel cut him off again. No, let me finish. And finish he did, not with anger, but with authority. Samuel's presence alone dominated the room. Every movement, every pause, every inflection of his voice carried weight. For the first time in his career, George looked unsure, almost vulnerable on his own show. The audience, both in studio and online, could feel the shift. Social media watchers had started noticing the change immediately. Comments flooded in. Samuel is not messing around. George just got schooled live. This is why he's a legend. Inside the studio, producers whispered frantically. Should they cut to commercial? Should they intervene? Should they apologize on air? But the cameras were already rolling, and the moment was unfolding live, unfiltered. Then came the line that would make history. If this is the kind of show you're running today, you don't need me here. Samuel slowly stood up. The movement was deliberate, commanding, and final. In that instant, the atmosphere shifted from tense to chaotic. Crew members froze. George's mouth hung open. Co-hosts and camera operators exchanged panicked glances. The show didn't just derail, it exploded. Samuel walked off the set. His footsteps echoed through the studio as the camera cut abruptly to commercial. For a split second, the audience inside the studio and millions watching at home were left stunned, speechless, and replaying the moment in their minds. The control room erupted. Producers yelled into headsets. Directors shouted instructions. And all anyone could think was, did this just happen? Back in the office, social media users immediately reacted. Clips of the walk-off spread like wildfire across TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and X. Fans praised Samuel for standing his ground. Critics debated George's approach. The hashtags exploded. Hashtag Team Samuel Jackson, hashtag GMA Drama, hashtag Live TV Meltdown, hashtag George Went Too Far. For Samuel, the action was simple. Protect his dignity, his career, and his message. For George, it was a live lesson in underestimating one of the most commanding personalities in Hollywood. By the time the show returned from commercial, Samuel was gone. The studio felt smaller, emptier, and heavier. It wasn't just a missing guest. It was a void, a reminder of the chaos that had just unfolded live for the world to witness. This was no ordinary interview. This was a battle of wills, a live showdown, a clash that would go down in the history of television. And for viewers everywhere, it was impossible to look away. One thing was certain. This moment wasn't just a scandal. It was an event. And Samuel L. Jackson had just rewritten the rules of live TV confrontations. When the cameras returned from commercial, the studio looked different. Empty chairs, silent crew members, and the echo of Samuel L. Jackson's footsteps still seemed to linger in the air. One thing was unmistakable. The atmosphere had shifted permanently. What was supposed to be a light-hearted morning interview had become a television spectacle, and the fallout was already unfolding. Producers quickly confirmed internally that Samuel had been escorted out, not in anger, but to prevent further disruption. Some called it a cooling-off decision, a standard protocol for live television. Others whispered that it was closer to being removed because the confrontation had escalated beyond anyone's control. Either way, the decision sent shockwaves through the studio staff. People who had been working at GMA for decades admitted they had never seen anything like this before. Meanwhile, the internet erupted in real time. Within minutes, clips of Samuel standing up and walking off went viral across TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and X. Fans everywhere couldn't get enough of the raw footage. Samuel's calm authority and George's visible discomfort made the perfect storm for trending content. Comments flooded in by the thousands. Samuel handled that like a legend. George crossed a line. This was unprofessional. This is live TV gold. He owned the set. Inside GMA, tension ran high. Executive producers held emergency meetings, discussing how this incident could affect future guest bookings. Hollywood publicists called, asking whether their A-list clients could appear safely on the show without being baited into viral controversies. Even co-hosts admitted it was one of the most awkward, unpredictable moments they had ever experienced on live television. Samuel's team also released a statement within hours. They clarified that the actor hadn't walked out in anger, but rather in defense of his dignity and his career. He will not tolerate being provoked or misrepresented on live television. The statement read. The wording only added fuel to the fire, sparking debates about professionalism, journalistic boundaries, and celebrity treatment in media interviews. The social media response was immediate and overwhelming. Fans aligned themselves clearly into sides, those supporting Samuel for standing up to manipulation, and those criticizing George for pressing too hard. Memes, reaction videos, and commentary exploded online. Some clips highlighted Samuel's measured composure, praising his restraint, while others replayed George's stunned reactions, showcasing the unexpected vulnerability of the host. Even mainstream media couldn't ignore the story. Headlines the next day focused on the shocking clash, with pundits debating. Was Samuel justified? Did George overstep? Could live television ever recover from this level of drama? The incident became a talking point across morning shows, entertainment news programs, and social media feeds worldwide. Inside the studio, there was still an unspoken truth. Live TV had no safety net that day. Samuel had reminded everyone that even in a controlled, professional environment, a single moment of tension could erupt into chaos. And when it did, there was no going back. By the end of the day, one thing was clear. This wasn't just a viral clip. This was a lesson in respect, power, and presence, a moment that would be remembered in television history. Samuel L. Jackson hadn't just walked off a show. He had owned the narrative, commanded attention, and left the world talking for days. And while GMA scrambled to manage the fallout, one fact remained undeniable. The clash would dominate headlines, social media feeds, and conversations around the globe for months to come. Samuel had walked away, but the impact of that walk, and what it symbolized, would linger far longer than any movie premiere or interview ever could. The moment Samuel L. Jackson walked off the Good Morning America set, the world exploded. Literally. Within minutes, clips of the confrontation went viral across TikTok, Instagram, X, and YouTube, racking up millions of views in hours. Fans were stunned, amused, and inspired all at once. Some hailed Samuel as a hero, a man standing up for his dignity, while others debated whether George Stephanopoulos had simply been doing his job. The hashtags began trending immediately. Hashtag Team Samuel Jackson. Hashtag George went too far. Hashtag GMA drama. Hashtag Live TV meltdown. Each clip replayed Samuel's calm but cutting responses, his piercing gaze, and the moment he stood up and walked away. Every social media platform was flooded with commentary, memes, and reaction videos. Creators dissected every frame, highlighting George's awkward attempts to regain control and Samuel's unshakable composure. YouTube reaction channels exploded with Live TV meltdown, and Samuel L. Jackson schools George videos, while TikTok users recreated the moment with dramatic reenactments, adding humor, suspense, and even audio mashups. Instagram reels amplified the chaos, some fans praising Samuel for his poise, others poking fun at George's stunned reaction. The incident quickly became a global conversation, with viewers from every corner of the world weighing in. Meanwhile, mainstream news outlets reported on the clash, turning a morning show segment into a major entertainment story. Headlines questioned journalistic ethics, celebrity treatment, and the power dynamics of live television. Analysts debated whether George had crossed a line, while Samuel's team emphasized the actor's commitment to respecting his career and his craft. The ripple effect didn't stop there. Within days, Hollywood insiders admitted that this moment would have consequences for future bookings. Publicists began insisting on pre-approved questions for A-list guests, worried that the next viral meltdown could happen at any time. Samuel's actions had set a precedent, one where celebrities could assert control without losing their professionalism, challenging the traditional dynamics of talk show interviews. Fans across social media were vocal. Some celebrated Samuel's courage, praising him for refusing to be baited for clicks. Others criticized George, calling the question provocative and unnecessary. The engagement was massive, with millions of likes, shares, and comments keeping the conversation alive for weeks. The world was no longer just watching. It was participating. In the studio, insiders described the aftermath as tense. GMA producers scrambled to contain the fallout, managing public statements and internal reviews. For Samuel, however, the action was simple. He had made his point, maintained his integrity, and walked away on his own terms. The incident had turned an ordinary morning show into a cultural moment, one that would be remembered, referenced, and debated for years. And for viewers, one truth was undeniable. Samuel L. Jackson hadn't just walked off a show. He had dominated a live broadcast, commanded global attention, and reminded everyone why he's one of the most iconic and fearless figures in Hollywood. The clash wasn't just a viral moment. It was a lesson in presence, authority, and respect, and it proved that sometimes standing up for yourself, even on live television, can make history. By the end of the day, one thing was certain. The world was watching, talking, and taking sides. And in this battle of wits and composure, Samuel L. Jackson had emerged not just victorious, but unforgettable.